Hello, college football fans, and welcome to episode 138 of College Football Throwdown. I'm your co-host, Alex Schmitz, and today I'm joined, as always, by my dad, Peter Schmitz.
Hello, Cornhusker fans and college football fans.
Hello, everybody. We are back, father-son duo here to talk about college football by college football fans for college football fans. And we are here today to talk about our favorite team, the Nebraska Cornhuskers, their loss to Michigan, as well as the things that are going on in the national world of college football, and the big games coming up this weekend.
That's right.
All right. And before we dive into all that, we've got our beverages to crack here. I've got my Kona Brewing Company Longboard Island Lager once again.
Very good. And I have a Yingling that I just recently picked up and finally got to open that case of beer that I've been traveling with for a little bit. So I'm ready to enjoy some Yingling.
All right, here we go.
All righty. If I can do it without breaking it open. There we go. I got it.
Good job.
Yes, I love this lager. It's good.
All right. So, of course, Nebraska played against Michigan in the Big House this past weekend. And both of us, spending much of our lives in Michigan, you raising your family there. Obviously, we have a connection with the University of Michigan and Michigan State and those fans more so than most other teams in the Big Ten that we play. And it was pretty obvious that Nebraska was going to lose this one. On our previous podcast, you predicted that we would lose 55-3, while I predicted that we would lose 38-10. And it being closer to my score with a total of 34-3.
Because you're the level-headed one of the two of us.
Yeah,
I'm the intensely emotional nut.
that you are. Because I kind of expected, based on the previous game against Minnesota, that we would see a continuation where the offense would really struggle, but that our defense could slow them down. Because just the previous week, Michigan had played against Rutgers and had some struggles early. And that proved to be mostly true in that, the defense did, three and out them in certain situations and keep them from scoring. But the offense was really inept in this particular game, and we had an injury to our second string quarterback, Chubba Purdy. So yeah, it was. I didn't watch much of the game, to be perfectly honest with you.
Well, and then our offensive coordinator got laid out and couldn't even stand without a support. So then we didn't have an offensive coordinator for a while, and then he eventually was able to somehow, with assistance, get himself up to the box, and he called plays from the coach's box up at the top of the stadium in the second half, probably because he was able to get an elevator ride and then assistance into the box.
Yeah, I hadn't really been following the whole situation with Mark Whipple, but I guess he has had some health struggles earlier in this year.
Oh yes, he's had blood clots and stuff. He's been coaching from a golf cart most of the season.
Huh. Okay, yep. But yeah, he took a hit, and good on him that he tried to keep going, and kept calling the plays and everything. That's a typical football coach.
I mean, there was a few plays that at the end of the half, just before halftime, that he was unable to call the plays, and there was reasonable expectation that he was not going to make it back out. And so, either Mickey or the assistant offensive coach, who is the only one that we have that has history of being a coordinator, was going to take the play sheet and go.
Right.
So it turned out that there were only like 3 or 4 plays that the other fellow had whose name I can't even remember, had to call, and then Whipple got back,
mm-hmm.
and did call the rest of it. But I'm sure he was in pain.
Oh yeah, I'm sure he was.
He got laid out. I mean, he got smacked because he's already a little old and slow, and then that came up on him so fast he wasn't getting away. I'm surprised he didn't just buckle a leg, to be
Right.
honest with you.
Yeah. Well, reminds me, I forget which game it was, but there was one where there's this old ref who was out on the field and he doesn't, there's players coming towards him and he doesn't even try to like go back. So they just like
Right.
fall on him and he goes down and it looked like it hurt him pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think I remember that. I think I remember that game. But yes, that's tough when that happens.
And speaking of that, freak accident sort of things, the whole situation with Chuba Purdy was very strange to me. Where he this was on our, of course, the one drive where we actually got something going, and we're in the red zone, and then he runs forward and goes for a slide, but kind of
Yes.
catches his knee in a weird way on the slide and gets hit a little
Yes.
bit, and then he's suddenly
Yep.
gripping his legs and stuff, and it's like, how do you injure yourself and put yourself out of the
I would love to see the statistics. I think it's surprisingly high. I'm
really
serious. Oh my gosh. And here's why. Turf, more so than natural grass, okay, is grippy, right? Like most fields are field turf, which have that combination of sand and cryogenically ground rubber, and so there's a grip to it. And these guys keep trying to slide with their legs sliding first, like you're sliding into a base, the traditional, baseball slide into the second base or whatever, right?
right.
Well, if you're going to slide, you should dive. Okay, that's the natural thing. You already are running the football. You have a forward lean. You should dive forward to get as many yards as you possibly can, and then be done with it. And I have seen more quarterbacks not get injured to the degree that Chubby did, because it sounds like Chubba hurt himself quite badly, and he's going to be out this week and maybe a few more weeks, right? So, but I've seen plenty of them tweak his leg, doing that same damn slide thing.
The headline I saw said that Chuba is out for the season. Like it's already the
Oh,
case.
I don't know. I haven't seen that, so that's news to me. That's interesting. Okay. Well, because when you go to slide, you have to get your whole lower body in front of your torso, right? And then slide. And then if you don't get enough um, air, if you don't get enough height on those legs, one of those legs is going to catch. It's going to land on the ground first while you still have forward momentum. Well, if you don't bend your leg right, or if by then you have contact with another player in or around that area, you run the risk of that leg not being able to move naturally, right? Bend, and voila, you got a damaged ankle, damaged knee, whatever.
I understand your point there, but I don't think them diving headfirst forward when you're adding into the equation that there are enemy players, right around, sometimes who are already, diving towards you to tackle you. If you're going head first, you're increasing the possibility of injuries that way.
Well, possibly, but my argument would be that, yeah, you're increasing the chance that you're going to have contact with somebody. But if somebody is diving at you, okay, when you're diving to the ground, then they're going to end up getting a penalty for that. I mean, that that's good. That's likely to lead to a spearing or a targeting call. So, in my opinion, most coaches would not teach that. Right? They would tell somebody to do everything they could to avoid that contact. So, my argument is still that those quarterbacks should go to the ground. Just go to the ground. Just get your ass to your knees and get that play whistled dead as fast as possible. None of this sliding crap. Okay, but
Right.
that's just me.
All
That's
right.
maybe that's a little too old school, and I get it. It's if you don't attempt to do the slide, then it's not defined as giving yourself up, right? And so then they would argue, well, he was still a runner, so he was open to be tackled. Whereas if he's attempting to slide, then everybody's supposed to back off and just let him do it.
Right.
And that, I don't know.
Yeah.
I hate all those rules, and those rules didn't exist when I played football, and they came many years later, and they're just bad.
They're new, so they're bad, says the
No,
old
they're
man.
exactly, exactly,
All right.
because they hate football.
Um,
Anyway,
I was a little bit surprised that we started the game with Chuba Purdy because after how the previous game went, I honestly was more impressed with Logan Smothers. And I kind of thought maybe we'd start with him because we had given Chuba more chances, but we came out with Chuba. And then, obviously the coaches are seeing things in practice we aren't. And eventually, when Logan did have to step in the game because Chuba was hurt, he was just as bad, basically, in terms of completion percentage and that sort of stuff. So I guess my faith was a little unfounded there.
well, but I would also tell you that Chuba Purdy was always going to be that starter. You're not appreciating how singular-minded Coach Whipple is about the two guys he brought in through the transfer portal this past season. Okay, his loyalty is to Casey Thompson and Chuba Purdy, and he has not shown any confidence or willingness to nurture any of our other quarterbacks. That's become pretty apparent. Because again, I think he's a guy that's here, and he knows he's a short timer. As soon as Scott was fired, he knew his time here was limited to the remainder of the season, and he was going to, he is going to complete that task with his guys. And so, he's with resistance playing Smothers. Now, I would say that you're right. Smothers looked terrible when he played, but it was primarily because he couldn't do anything, right? At that point, our offense was so inept. Their defense was in our face to some extent. Although I will concede that there were some times when Smothers had some time and wasn't able to, make the right choice, right, and physically execute to get a completion. Again, I think part of that is if you're an offensive coordinator, you need to adjust your play calling and create some creativity, an opportunity for a guy that you have on your team based on his skill set,
Right.
not based on what you want to do offensively with your offensive system, but to be able to adjust. And again, I'm gonna throw Whipple under the bus here again. I've been highly unimpressed by our offensive coordinator.
Well, just to the point of that, because I was kind of following along with the play-by-play on, ESPN or whatever on some of those sites as I was doing other things. And there was one sequence in particular I remember where it was like Anthony Grant ran it. We passed it to Anthony Grant. It was like basically like 4 or 5 plays in a row that were all Anthony Grant. And it's like, obviously he's a great player, but you can't become like that predictable,
Right.
Unless he's like a superstar type where you're just like daring the other team to stop you because you know that they can't. But Grant's not that level of a player.
Well, no, he hasn't been able to demonstrate that yet. I think he has some pretty healthy skills, but he just doesn't have the skills to overcome, an offensive line that is so bad.
Right.
And so that's the problem. I mean, at the day, that's our big problem.
Yeah. Now, observant listeners will remember that after the last podcast, we predicted that there was a good possibility that our new coach could be announced after this Michigan loss, or it would come after the Iowa game at the end of our regular season. And here we are, we're recording on a Tuesday. The college football playoff rankings have not yet come out as we record, but there's been no announcement in terms of a new coach. So it seems more likely that whoever Trev has been talking to is a current coach and wouldn't be available until after their regular season is done as well. However, there have been more rumors swirling in the internet space about Matt Rule potentially being in Lincoln, seeing the stadium, things of that nature. I'd say he seems to be the top name on people's lips, but no real proof that that's reality yet.
No, and in fact, I think all of that is just people are filling the silence with whatever the just throwing stuff against the wall. Number one, I doubt very seriously that he is in Lincoln. Okay, this Matt Rule character. Number two, I don't think they would ever, if they didn't intend to announce it, they would never have him in town. He's not going to visit the facilities physically. Um, but while he's being courted to be the head coach, whoever that next head coach is, okay, he's gonna be sent videos. He's gonna be shown the campus, through aerial photography. Um, in all likelihood, whoever this person is will have been able to research himself based on history, knowing the stadium and the status of the stadium and the other facilities, and the fact that they're all brand new, I mean, is a huge, should be a huge selling point for Nebraska. So, it makes zero sense, and I've never been buying into that. My personal feeling and why I stated that I thought it might happen basically in this weekend and early this week following last week's game was this was the game that was going to ultimately make us mathematically ineligible to play a bowl game. So now these last two games, truly, we're not playing for a bowl game. We're clearly not playing for any kind of chance at going to Indianapolis. So our season is over effectively, except to play out the string of games that we still have left, right? It's to go through senior day and to honor our seniors this Saturday, and then to play the traditional Black Friday game with Iowa.
Right.
And so we're playing for pride at this point.
Right.
Nothing else.
I will say, because I was seeing more of these Matt Rule rumors, I double checked on his coaching record and stuff. And I came away more impressed and thinking that he would be a good choice because he had a history with Temple, working there as an assistant coach, left and then came back as their head coach, did well there, then came to Baylor and had an abysmal year one, a more mediocre year two, and then a great year three where he had 11 wins, and then he went off to the NFL after that. I'm more, and he's in his 50s, I think, early 50s, so he's got a lot of time left as a coach if he wants to. So I'm in the camp where if Matt Rule was announced as the guy, I'd be pretty happy with that.
Oh, I would too. I don't think it's going to happen.
Right.
Because again, I think that there are ample reasons for us for Nebraska to want to have that guy in place so that he could be working behind the scenes to organize his staff, working on his own individually to solidify recruits and the recruiting class, to evaluate it and then decide who he wants to retain offers with and who he doesn't, and then to solidify those that he wants to keep, right? And then and the season is effectively over, right? Except for these two games that we still have to play, just to play out the string. But there's nothing to play for here other than pride, right? And that's the team's job to do that. So I would have thought that this would have been a window. The fact that it hasn't happened, I thought they would only use this window if it was somebody that was available, like a Matt Rule, an Urban Meyer, a Patterson, a Peterson, any of those names of coaches that are currently not coaching. Those are the guys that would have fit into that. That tells me that whoever we are going to get is probably going to be coaching right now. Mm-hmm. That person is either a head coach or a major coordinator assistant at a program right now, and so we're going to wait till that coach's season, regular season, is over. And I wouldn't be surprised if it goes well beyond a week past. I'm not. Everybody seems convinced the decision's already made. I'm not convinced.
Interesting. Even though, Trev has had quite a bit of time, right? He fired Scott after the third game and brought Mickey in, but, he had to be looking elsewhere under the assumption that Mickey probably wasn't going to pull out a miraculous turnaround, right? So he's had 2 months or whatever to be looking out for people.
You're absolutely right. Again, keep in mind, it takes two to tango, right? And so you need to have the other side, the coach that you are targeting, available to have an interview, right? And
Right.
so, um, and they wanted to go through the process. I mean, Trev had given himself a time frame that allowed him to use his search company to vet a lot of choices. And then, like I said, I think I described previously, you got to filter that through the funnel, get it down to a group of, four or three, and then try to target interviewing those guys. And if one or two of those three guys are not available or are unwilling to interview with you, they're interested in the job, but they don't want to do it until after their season is over because they want to be focused and commit to the kids they've got in front of them right now. Okay. If he got that kind of reaction, then he might have changed his timeline. And that's why I'm saying it's not a guarantee that, on the Saturday after Black Friday, we're going to be announcing our head coach, or, there's going to be rumor will break and then the announcement will come on Sunday, of that weekend. Right. So that's a possibility, but it wouldn't shock me at all if we went another week beyond that because we needed to have some guys come in for or get together with Trev for interviews or whatever before we made a final decision and they made a final decision to say yes.
Right. One other thing I'll mention is I saw a headline from an interview with Mickey Joseph that I believe happened today or yesterday, where he basically expressed that he was open to staying on the staff as an assistant in the likely outcome that he would not be the next head coach, and be on somebody else's staff. So I thought that was good to see, Mickey showing, not showing some, humility, I guess, and like not being so prideful, being like, well, I wasn't chosen as the head coach, so I'm out of here, sort of thing. But there's the question of would the new person want him around?
Right. And I'm hopeful that they interview him. I think it would be wise for any new coach coming in. It's not uncommon. People seem to think this is uncommon, but it's not. It's not uncommon for a new coach to retain one or two key coaches from the existing staff, even if they know it's just for a year or two, to help with the transition for the players and to have somebody on the staff that knows the lay of the land a little bit, right, ahead of you, and maybe they're a good recruiter, maybe they're a key recruiter for you, and so you give them a couple of years, and then you evaluate them, and after 2 years of your program, if he's not working out, then you move on from him and you let him go at that time. But it's not an uncommon thing, and people seem to act like it is. So I'm hopeful, and I think Mickey understands that too. In fact, I think he's probably been the beneficiary of that on an occasion or two in his career because he has those great skills. Right? He's got that recruiting acumen, and he's also very knowledgeable and connected to some key recruiting areas, territories like Louisiana and Arkansas and Alabama and places like that. So I just think those are the reasons why someone would initially keep him, and then they would find out that he's a character guy and a pretty damn good wide receivers coach.
Right. Yeah, I hope to see him and Bill Bush stick around, but obviously we'll have to wait and see how things go there. I was going to say, was there anything else you wanted to say on the coaching situation before we move on?
Well, not so much the coaching thing, but just maybe one more comment I would like to make about the Michigan game and just the status of Nebraska's program right now. The reality is, we're not very talented. That's why we're losing, right? That's part of why we're losing. Our culture isn't good. There's all kinds of things, but at the end of the day, we're playing with certain players in certain positions that just aren't very good, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I've just got to tip my hat to Bill Bush and what he's been able to do. Now, I will concede that in the second half, for example, in this Michigan game, I mean, they could have named the score. And the reality is part of the reason why that score didn't get closer to the prediction I gave was because Michigan kind of treated it a little bit like a practice. This was a really good, valuable scrimmage for them to work on the areas of their team that they need to get better at, and that was the deep ball. They threw quite a number of medium to long range passes, which are low, probability type of passes, knowing that at any moment in the game that they wanted to, they they could just decide to commit to the running game and just finish us off. And we were not challenging their defense enough to even feel like they were threatened.
Right.
If I really think that they called their game plan was quite simply, let's spend the first half getting control of the game, and then trying to work on our passing game. And then when it wasn't going so well, because our defense was playing pretty well, we were covering guys and stuff. It's not like they had guys running wide open, and we were even getting a little pressure, right? So all that
Well,
seemed adequate.
on that, two things on that point. In terms of passing, both teams were actually equal in terms of completions and attempts, 10 of 20. So we
Right.
were equal in that regard, that they had 148 yards to our 71 in terms of passing. And both teams had 2 sacks each, to your point. So we were
Yep.
getting a bit of pressure. But also on the last podcast, one of the reasons you gave your score was because you thought that because Michigan is in the playoff discussion and has the committee's eyes on them, that they wanted to make a statement with Nebraska and really run up the score. But it seems like that wasn't Jim Harbaugh's goal.
Well, had their passing game been clicking more, had they been able to get guys open, then in all likelihood that score would have been much uglier. I think that was their intention. But once they realized, okay, you know what, their quarterback is not having a great day, whatever, the receivers aren't having a great day, that's okay. We're just gonna, we always had as a backup our ability to just pound the rock and take it out on these guys. And in the third and fourth quarter, they ran off tackle like 15 plays in a row, it felt like. I mean, it wasn't, but it felt like that because we could not stop it. I mean, literally, their running back. And so then it became more of a let's get him some yards and promotion, for the Heisman. So they would, even when he was late in the game and they were trying to protect him, right, so he wouldn't get hurt, they were putting in their substitutes, their second and third team running backs, um, and and then they would bring Corum back in when they got close to the goal line so that he could score the touchdown.
Right.
So I mean, so there were a number of things at work in their strategy that led to us having the final score that we had. And part of it is they struggled to pass the football, and our defense did pretty well. And our defense did pretty well in the running game in the first half, but we just wore down. Eventually, when your offense is inept like that, you're just on the field too much, and your defense is gonna wear down. But we showed some players, man. We've got a few young players that I like and I'm excited about. So I just hope we can retain them through this coaching change. So that's it. That's it on the game. And as far as the coaching thing, I think now we just need to, everybody just needs to chillax and realize that nothing major is going to be announced formally until after that Iowa game. And even then, Nebraska fans are going to be literally crawling up walls if they don't get an announcement after that Iowa game. And I'm here to tell you that there's a possibility that this decision has not been made at all because even though Trev was available and they were able to do all the background stuff, they were not able to do the final interviews until after that weekend. So I could see it going another week, which would put it right next to the early recruiting. Because basically, Trev Albers has admitted that, hey, we're going to do whatever we have to do. We're going to take whatever amount of time we have to take to get this hire as right as we possibly can. Okay. So if it means we have to sacrifice this recruiting cycle, so be it.
Right. Well, yeah, it seems like at this point, Trev is kind of given up on that, because this would be the timeline where he would have needed to announce it right around now if he really
I
wanted
agree.
to keep aggressively going after that recruiting class. So yeah.
I agree. And our recruiting class isn't all that great, so I think he's and now with the new rules and stuff, and the fact that you can have an unlimited number of signees in a season as long as you are not above 85 by August 1st or whatever, then let the new coach go out and get as many guys as he needs when the time comes.
Right. Okay, so transitioning here to the national side of things for college football, we have to start out with a tragic piece of news that has been at the top of the headlines here recently. A former Virginia football player came to the University of Virginia's campus with a gun and killed 3 people, wounding 2. And 3 of those victims were current members of the Virginia football team. So it's been a very sad few days in the world of college football. A lot of people mourning, other people at other schools who had transfers from Virginia or whose players went to Virginia, and things like that helps you realize how interconnected this whole community is. So yeah, very, very sad situation there at Virginia.
It really is. And we were just on that campus not more than 2 weeks ago, your mom and I, as we were in our travels, and beautiful, beautiful campus, and drove by the stadium and everything. And so yeah, it's almost surreal to realize that happened. And the fact that it was teammates, right? Because usually, and you frequently hear the commentary about the bonds that are made, and you know that those guys all don't like each other, but they're brothers in that locker room, right?
Mm-hmm.
They may not like each other outside of that locker room, but when they're together in that locker room, they're a team, right? And so when that starts to break down, and then you have a person who obviously had some issues, kind of come in and not have a conscience and do make the choices that he made, it's just really hard to take.
Yeah. And one of the Virginia players who was killed in this event was a former Wisconsin running back. Wide receiver.
Wide receiver. Yeah.
Yes. And so that's already been commented upon. Of course, Wisconsin is the team that Nebraska is playing this upcoming weekend. So I'd not be surprised to see some tribute to that player and to have Wisconsin come in even more focused than usual to try to, show their brother proud.
Right. I would agree with you. And yeah, it's just, and like you say, it that the fact that there were transfers involved and stuff just shows that it's even more interconnected today. And so, there's going to probably be a moment of silence at an awful lot of stadiums this weekend in honor of those football players. And it's just another reminder of the sad reality of our state of affairs here in the United States.
Right. Transitioning off of that into other football talk, because of some of the games this weekend, we've started to get confirmation on some of the conference championship games and who they'll be. For example, in the SEC, it's now confirmed that it'll be LSU versus Georgia, and in the ACC, it is Clemson versus North Carolina. And in the Big 12, TCU, because they won this weekend, is guaranteed to be one of the 2 teams in the Big 12 championship game.
And it's also guaranteed that in the Big 10, a team with at least 3 conference losses is going to be from the West.
Yep. Basically, yeah. The best team from the West versus either Ohio State or Michigan.
Right.
That's going to be the big game to watch that weekend for sure. That'll be a fun one.
Yep.
And I have to say, although I was impressed with LSU, how they've made a comeback later in the season and how they're able to beat Alabama, I don't know if they've got what it takes to hold up with Georgia, because Georgia also has a good defense like LSU does. But we saw what Georgia did to Tennessee and to Oregon and to other well-regarded teams this year. So I'm definitely favoring them pretty big in that one.
I would agree, and um, I feel the same way, frankly, about the Clemson North Carolina game, but maybe for a slightly different reason. Not because I've been overly impressed with Clemson, but that I haven't really been overwhelmed by North Carolina, and so even as up and down, I would say uneven as the Clemson team has been this year, I would place them as a fairly comfortable favorite in that matchup as well.
All right. Well, and although Nebraska lost this weekend, Nebraska fans did have some things to celebrate, such as the fact that both Texas and Oklahoma lost on that same weekend. uh,
Yes.
so Texas was playing against TCU in kind of the marquee game of the weekend and lost 17-10, while Oklahoma played against West Virginia and lost 23-20.
Yes, and that West Virginia team is currently viewed as probably one of the worst teams in the league.
Yeah, they had
So
like
having that loss was never one that was expected. Where the Texas TCU loss, at least that was a marquee matchup where you knew. And frankly, I think Texas appointed themselves rather well in that game. That they certainly had opportunities to win that football game.
Well, so on the previous podcast, we predicted that game. I predicted that TCU would win 38-28, while you predicted that Texas would win 31-21. Now it
Yep.
ended up being a much lower scoring game, especially by Big 12 standards, right, of 17-10.
Yes.
And I watched the recap of that game, and frankly, TCU, I don't think Texas played that well. TCU should have won it bigger.
Oh,
Because
absolutely.
because TCU missed a field goal that was very makeable earlier on in the game, and then they in the fourth quarter with like 4 minutes to go, when it was 17-3, gave up a fumble that Texas picked up for a touchdown that brought it to 17-10 and made it. That's what made it close. But up to that point, I mean, Texas's offense had been able to do almost nothing.
Nothing. That is correct. You are correct. However, I would say that I watched quite a bit of that game, and I would tell you that in most of the first half, that was a back and forth battle. There were some great defensive plays being made on both sides, but there were moments in that game where Texas's offense was having good success, and their defense was having very good success. Their defense was blitzing and giving TCU all kinds of trouble, right? And so they were certainly a competitive opponent. TCU sure as heck wasn't running away with it.
Right.
Okay, and so that's kind of what I say, and that gets back to even as we look at the post mortem on the Nebraska season, I think we're going to have quite a bit of conversation about what Bill Bush was able to do with the defense, and the fact that if you have a defense that can hang around, then you can stay in football games. Then you need the offense to do just enough to keep it competitive, and then you're there. But right now, in Nebraska's case, we don't have enough offense, and right now Texas doesn't either.
Right.
Right, like
Well,
when they get against a good opponent, they just don't have enough.
I mean, that comes back to that classic phrase, defense wins championships, right? And
Yep.
in the Bo Pelini era, I think we saw that very starkly, especially in the years where we had Ndamukong Suh on our team, right? Where we had one of the best defenses in the country, but then our offense was just average. And so we would get 9 wins, but we couldn't go farther than that, and we ran up
Correct.
into that wall.
Yep, exactly right. Exactly right. And so that's where being a complete team, right? Having good balance and being able to do, you know, enough things well that you can adjust as the season progresses, because people are going to take away what they think you do well and make you go to the weak part of your game. That's what a good defensive preparation will do. And so you better have balance.
Right. And then in that Oklahoma West Virginia game, it was kind of a back and forth game where both were kind of trading the lead with each other at a certain point. But West Virginia managed to score last
Right.
and win the game, with leaving Oklahoma now 5-5 under Brett Venables.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, is that I'm just a little bit concerned that depending on how these last two games go for them, um, that they may decide to pull that trigger. I know that's not fair. That's unreasonable. I mean, they hired Brent Venables. Okay, he's a guy coming home, so to speak, because he had coached for a number of years at OU, so he has some connections there and all that sort of stuff. But he hadn't been a head coach before. Okay. And, Mike Riley, gutted that program of some of their best players.
You mean
Not Mike Riley.
Lincoln
What?
Riley?
Lincoln Riley. Holy cow. What a horrible Freudian slip that was.
Same guy, really.
I mean, Lincoln Riley. He gutted that team. And you had to know that then Venables was coming into a locker room where he had a lot of disappointed players. And it's pretty clear to me that between the talent losses and then some of the dynamics that were kind of thrust onto the Oklahoma program over the last 12 months, he didn't manage it well, or it might be unfair to put that all on him. So I don't know what their athletic department's thinking, but with the impending move to the SEC, they don't have a lot of time. They don't have a lot of runway to get this right.
Right.
So they either need to, if they end up having a 6-6 season, or even a 7-5 season, and go to a bowl game and win a bowl game, and they're 8-5, well, that might be a salvage, right? But if anything less than that, and he's going to be on the hot seat, I believe, to begin next season at the very least.
Well, I just looked up because I'm curious. So the last two games are Oklahoma State, the classic rivalry game, and then Texas Tech. And now Oklahoma State has kind of fallen apart here in recent weeks, whereas Texas Tech, they played it like close with Kansas State, I believe, and then, or I think they might have beaten Kansas State, and then they also beat Kansas, I know, this past weekend. So, those are both teams that Oklahoma, theoretically should win, but definitely not gimmies.
Correct. Exactly. And so I could see them being 6-6, or even 5-7, or 7-5. I mean, I could see any of those scenarios playing out for OU. But I'm just hopeful that Nebraska gets their coach in place before that Oklahoma job becomes available, if in fact it does this year.
Right. And so I was wrong. Kansas State did beat Texas Tech, and then they played it close with TCU. That was the more recent game I was thinking of.
Yes.
But my prediction would be that Brent Venables, like Mario Cristobal at Miami and Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M, because maybe more so due to the money in their contracts than their performance on the field, will stick around and survive this year. But will be under immense pressure next year to show considerable turnaround, or risk being fired next year. That's my prediction.
I think that's a very good prediction.
Yeah.
I would put a star next to that one.
Speaking of which,
let's revisit that.
Yes, we'll have to remember that. Put a pin in it.
Exactly.
Speaking of Texas A&M, they also played this past weekend against Auburn, a team that fired their coach and is currently searching for a coach like us, and lost in an ugly game of 13-10, now leaving them at 3-7, just like Nebraska, and out of bowl contention.
Yep. And they had the number 1 recruiting class in the country.
Yep. Apparently, in some preseason polls, they were as high as number 6.
Yep. So that's underperformance.
Yeah.
On a massive scale.
It is. And apparently Jimbo Fisher's current buyout is $86 million if they were to fire him today. So it's a pretty price tag right there that they've gotten themselves into.
Yep, exactly. Well, and then you know what? That price tag, that's interesting, because I'm going to do some more research, and in the off season, maybe even over the bowl season or something, we can do this. We're gonna delve into this whole athletic department money thing, because my recent research is enlightening me to the idea that even though these schools are now getting these massive revenue flows from the conferences like the SEC and the Big Ten, those schools' spending is outstripping even that flow of money.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some schools in trouble financially.
Right.
And and if our economy were to take a big dive like it did in the mid 2000s, okay, and there was an extended recession that borders on depression, which is certainly being forecasted by more than one economist in America today, uh, a lot of these schools could be in deep doo doo.
Right. One of the other big games from last week was Oregon versus Washington, which
Oh yeah,
we did not give a score on, but we did predict the winner, and both of us thought that Oregon had that pretty well under control. You know, they were considered to be one of the top teams in the country, ranked number 6 in the playoff rankings.
mm-hmm.
But they ended up losing that game actually, 37-34. And I watched. Once again, I watched the recap of that game, and to me, it was clear that Oregon was the better team, the more talented team, but they made some serious mistakes. For example, they fumbled it at the goal line, basically while they were prepping to score,
Yep.
and gave up some massive passes, like 3 really big deep balls that led to Washington scores. Um, and then at the end of the game, I believe it was tied 34-34. And then Oregon's not at the 50 yet. They haven't passed into the opponent's territory yet. And they go for it on a 4th and 1 to get the first down. And the running back like stumbles and doesn't get there. And so then that gives Washington the ball. And basically, you know, they'll have to get a few more yards to get the field goal, which they did. That won them the game. So Oregon had a lot of mistakes.
Yes. Well, and I watched quite a bit of that game, and the thing I came away with was I don't know the ages of them, but those two football teams look more put together. I mean, physically, right? If you look at their offensive and defensive linemen, if you look at their running backs, their linebackers, I mean, both of those programs have some real athletes, and they are definitely, they look good coming off the bus. You know what I mean? Like those are two teams that are pretty impressive looking. And now, I don't know what that means for the future, but I kind of feel like both of those newer coaches in those two programs have got their programs going in the right direction. Obviously, Oregon's disappointed that they lost because they could have put themselves in a really good position if they hadn't. But the fact is that I look at what they've got going on, and if I was a fan of either of those schools, I would be optimistic about my future.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with you. Oregon, even in that loss, they showed some serious speed with some of their players and things like that. So they've definitely got some talent there. And then another big game that we also gave a quick prediction for was Alabama versus Ole Miss. Alabama coming off that loss. So I predicted that Saban would get the team together and get the win. So I predicted that they would win. This time you went with the upset. And of course, it was the one time where they didn't pull off the upset. But it was darn close. It was a 30 to
Yes.
24 win for Alabama.
It was a last play of the game kind of deal, where Old Miss had a chance up until the very end, and then when it didn't happen, it just didn't happen.
Yeah.
But they had their chances, and again, Alabama, as I watched that game, just seemed really uneven. Times they looked really good and like okay, I see them, they're getting it together, and then they wouldn't. And so even Alabama's performance over the course of the game was just not at all trending consistently in a positive direction.
Yeah. Well,
I
yeah,
don't think it.
Ole Miss was actually winning 17-7 at a certain point. Like you say,
Right.
had a chance to win it at the end. It
Yep.
reminds me of one of those SEC short YouTube videos where I
Yeah.
think after Alabama lost to LSU, they had like a poll. It was like he was being taken on like a Make-A-Wish trip where like this is what it's like if you get to go to the national championship game and be in the playoff, you know, with poor little Alabama there, you know, getting the pity tour basically. And like they showed the playbook at one point. It was all the plays were all the same, where it was like I hope that Bryce Young bails us out or something like that. You know, so they do seem to be
Yep.
relying on him a lot.
Yep. Exactly. Exactly.
All right.
And I don't know.
This was interesting. Kansas State played against Baylor in a pretty big game in the Big 12, and they destroyed Baylor 31-3. Though unfortunately, Adrian Martinez got injured kind of earlier on in that game and is apparently out for the season with a leg injury.
That is correct. Yep. And but his backup, frankly, has played better than him on almost every occasion where he's been asked to play, because Adrian has had some other nick and ding up type injuries that have cost him some time, and then a full game here or there earlier in the season. And each time this Howard guy has come in and played well, and so frankly, K State might have a more consistent performer in that quarterback seat now with this Howard guy than they were getting out of Adrian.
Yep.
Because really, if you look at Adrian's numbers for the season, they were good. They weren't great. And as we watched in the previous week, he still had that propensity to have the most ungodly bad timing for a mistake, even when he's otherwise playing well.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I commented on that previously that Howard guy is clearly a better passer, even though he's not as good of a runner as Adrian. One
Right.
thing I
You
wanted
are.
Right. One thing I want to touch on real quick, going back to that Oregon game, is when I mentioned that fumble that Oregon had right at the goal line, right, that cost them basically 7 points. That was another time where it was short down a distance, and they went under center, and it went wrong, and they fumbled it. And I've seen that multiple times this season and last year, and
Mhm.
it's amazing to me that these centers and quarterbacks are so good at the shotgun, which the ball is traveling a farther distance. It should be harder, right? More prone to mistakes than a simple
Right. The
pass it,
variation.
pass
Yeah.
it a single foot, under your butt to the guy right behind you, right under center. But it seems like because these teams either don't practice enough in practice, or they do practice it, but then when they're in a game time situation, it's not something you're used to doing. You just are nervous, and you don't have the muscle memory for it, and mistakes
Yep.
happen. And I've seen it so many times. It's amazing.
No, and you just hit on it at the very end of your commentary there, I think, Alex, and that is muscle memory, right? And the thing is that here's the question: how often do they really practice it? You know, but I mean, I'm speaking of having the quarterbacks go under center. They may practice it every day, but when in practice are they doing it? Are they doing it at the end of practice? Are they doing it in the middle of practice? Or are they doing it interspersed throughout the practice? I'm going to speculate that in most cases they have one devoted period where they're doing their goal line or whatever, and during that time they get a decent number of repetitions. But that's not the same as when you're taking that snap, in the fourth quarter, when you're physically tired, when your bones are already starting to ache, and it's cold outside, or even if the case that it's not cold outside, it's just a very uncomfortable situation. Your hands are sweaty, whatever the case may be. And that center also, his pants, his football pants are probably full of sweat or dirt or whatever, right? So there's all kinds of variables that are not there when you're practicing. And so then when those things happen in a real game setting, it's different than they practiced. And
Right.
that little bit of difference, along with the nerves and all the other things you said, that just causes that to be an unpredictable experience.
Yep. Yeah, it seems that way. I'd like to see people improve on that in the future. Maybe, like Notre Dame played against Navy this week, go to the Navy practices maybe for a week and learn from them, because they don't seem to have a problem with it.
Right. Well, and frankly, it was a fairly rare occurrence in the sport when most everyone was still under center. And I'm here to tell you that I think there is a place, and some coach is going to figure that out at the Division 1 Power 5 level, that that having a player, a quarterback system where you still do the traditional dropbacks, and you get the guy under center, it gives you some advantages, in terms of angles with your running backs and things like that are pretty attractive. And because it looks so different now, because everybody else is taking shotgun, snap, I think it could be a big plus.
Yeah, could be. Here are two interesting upsets that happened this week. Number 12, UCLA played against Arizona, who has not had a great season, and lost 34-28. While in the Big Ten, Illinois played against Purdue, two teams that beat Nebraska, and Purdue managed to win 31-24. So Illinois, who was in the driver's seat of the Big Ten West, has now bungled it.
Yep. And so now they're still effectively in a tie. But it would depend on what happens with the other teams between now and the end of the season for them to get a chance at the division. But they have to play in Ann Arbor.
Right.
No, I'm sorry. It's not. It's in. I think it might be a home game, but they have to play Michigan.
It is actually in Ann Arbor. I looked that up.
It is in Ann Arbor. Okay, so now watch them play Michigan really tough.
That would be funny
because they have a good defense, a very good defense, one of the tops in the country statistically, and they have a legitimate NFL running back.
Mm-hmm.
So, but again, I saw him get banged around quite a bit last week.
Yep. And then the last game we'll talk about here is the game that involves Wisconsin, who, of course, Nebraska will be playing next week, which was Wisconsin versus Iowa, where Iowa managed to win 24-10 in a very defensive game. Wisconsin had 6 sacks while Iowa had 4, so a lot of good defense being played on both sides. But Wisconsin made some mistakes. They were 3-1 in the turnover game, including one as a pick 6. And I believe Iowa also had a blocked punt in there as well. So yeah, I mean, props to Iowa. They just came and executed better on the day.
And so here's the reality. Iowa is probably what I would describe as the likely leader in terms of the highest percentage chance that they're going to represent the West. Mm-hmm. And their offense is ranked lower than 120th in the nation.
Yeah, they've been abysmal on offense this year, but their defense has been astounding. So it balances out.
And their special teams.
And their special teams, yes.
Right, and that's there you go. Right, I mean that in the current version of the Big Ten West, great defense and attention to detail on special teams keeps you in an awful lot of games.
Yep. Well, that would be funny because Iowa, once again, got off to a rough start this year. So if they somehow found their way back into the Big Ten championship yet again, that would be kind of funny.
Yeah, but I don't find any humor in it because I don't want anything positive to happen for the University of Iowa.
Fair enough. But I do think it gives Nebraska fans some hope, right, going into this Wisconsin game, in that Wisconsin clearly is prone to some mistakes if you're able to force them into it, right? And the defense is the strength of our current team. So if we can put some pressure on that quarterback, then we might be able to get some stuff done, use our solid special teams that we've shown this year to, flip the field on them with some good punts and things like that. But the big question mark, of course, will be our offense. Chubba Purdy, like I said, is definitely out for the season, it seems. Apparently, Casey Thompson has been taking some passes in practice, but he's a day-to-day guy, so it's unclear if he'll be fit to play in this upcoming game. And if he's not, I don't really see any chances of us winning, given how poor we've looked on offense.
I would agree, especially if we're not willing to go through a fairly substantial transition in terms of what we spent our time on this week. We would have had to make the decision early this week that neither Chubba Purdy nor Casey Thompson were available, and then spend the entire week trying to hone in on a series of plays that we could get reps on that would lend themselves to the strengths of our third team quarterback Smothers. But the fact that Casey Thompson was still taking snaps tells me they didn't do that. Right? So My only hope now is that he is truly healthy enough and he can go out there and play and be effective.
Right.
Because if that's not the case, they are really hurting themselves by not committing to Smothers. I mean, you gotta at some point you gotta cut bait and move on, and they should have done that and said we're going to save, him for the final game against Minnesota or against Iowa, and then we're going to take Smothers and we're going to commit to Smothers for this week. And our backup to Smothers now is a guy that is a walk on from Hastings High School, Hastings, Nebraska. Who has apparently done looked pretty good in practice. Doing running the scout team. But again, he's more of one of these savvy quarterbacks. Doesn't have any spectacular skills. He's not super fast. He's not super athletic. He's not, he doesn't. He's tiny. He's like 5'10" or 5'11", but he just makes plays, right? He just continues to make plays in practice. So
Right.
that's why he's getting the nod as the backup as the backup to Smothers. So there you go. Sorry about that.
Nope, that's fine. But it'll be a pretty sad situation if we're forced to play our fourth string quarterback at this point in the season. But that's what we're looking at currently.
Well, that's yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I would rather have rather than pushing it with Thompson, I would rather hold off and have him available then because we give him a full another week to get healthy so that we would have him for the Iowa game because I think that would be really important to us because we're going to need some offense to win that game because their defense is so good that unless we have something to be effective at, we won't score a point against Iowa unless our defense does it.
Right. Yeah. I see your point there. It's kind of a gamble this week of like, is if Casey's actually good enough, and I believe you thought potentially that Casey could come back, in our previous two games, and obviously he wasn't ready for it. So he's had some time off, but
Yep.
only the coaches really know how good he actually is, and we may be in a, because like we said, Wisconsin in that game against Iowa got 6 sacks. They were getting back there a lot. We're gonna, whoever the quarterback is gonna take some hits, and we don't want Casey to go down on that shoulder and immediately have to come out of the game because he re-injured it.
Right, right. Well, and that's the thing. He's got multiple things. Right now, the thing that's been keeping him out is his hand. And he can't even he couldn't even grip a football. That's it's a nerve. He's got some nerve issues. So I'm sorry. I mean, the first time that guy throws a pass and he hits a helmet with his hand, or he hits a shoulder pad, or somebody slaps at it because it's going to be cold, you know, I mean, he's done. And that's the thing. If he's still in that mode and not truly, you know, healthy, then I think you give him the extra time for recovery. But you needed to make that decision last Saturday night
Right.
and say, okay, as soon as we know, or maybe Monday morning, if that's when they found out that Chuba was definitely not available, as soon as you knew that was true, in my opinion, that was when the coaching staff needed to get together and say, okay, what's the best thing for us to do over the next 2 weeks, right? And my opinion, I have shared.
Right. Okay, well, I'm going to predict this Wisconsin Nebraska game. I'm going to predict, being a bit optimistic here, that it'll be a pretty low scoring game, a pretty defensive game on both sides. That our defense will come to play like they have recently. um, and I'm going to predict that it will likely be Smothers playing most of the time as the quarterback. Um, and that we won't be able to score many points, but maybe we'll be able to get a drive or two in, and hopefully that'll be enough to at least keep it close. So I'm going to predict that Wisconsin wins, but it'll be a lower scoring game. So let's say 21 Wisconsin to 13 Nebraska.
Okay, that's good. I haven't looked at what the weather's going to be like this weekend in Lincoln. And it is senior day, which is always kind of an emotional event. I think there's, like you said, there's going to be some sadness on the sidelines at Wisconsin, particularly, and I think the crowd is going to be subdued because Nebraska fans are kind of probably at the end of their rope in terms of energy and enthusiasm. So, regretfully, I am not as optimistic as you. I think that there's a big difference between our defense and Iowa's defense. And and when Wisconsin has played a team that didn't have a great defense, they looked pretty damn good, right? Where they have trouble is when you can pressure their quarterback into making mistakes. And I'm not sure we can do that. We might be able to slow down the running game a little bit because I don't know that this is the best offensive line Wisconsin's ever had. But I think that their quarterback, who has looked very, very pedestrian for much of his career and much of the season, he will look great against us. And I'm going to say that they're going to end up putting 38 points against us, and we're going to score 10. So I'm going to say 38 to 10.
All right. Well, we'll see how that ends up going. Um, and then looking ahead here, there are some big games in the Pac-12 this week because UCLA lost, Oregon lost, right? So the window's kind of opening up for USC to really secure their place in their side of the division to win, whereas Oregon is now tied with a bunch of other teams as a two-loss team, I believe, in the Pac-12. So it'll be interesting to see how all that gets sorted out. I'm sorry, in terms of at least conference play, they only have the one loss. Oregon does, but
Right.
so Utah also only has one loss. So that's going to be a big game because Oregon and Utah are playing, and USC and UCLA are playing. Big game here in the Los Angeles area. So what's your prediction for Oregon Utah?
Wow. I really like Oregon's coach. Okay. But his challenge is always that he's confronting teams like Oregon and Washington and USC that have more talent than him. They can just out recruit him. But he beats them quite regularly because he's a disciplined coach and he maximizes his talent really well. Um, I'm going to say that, isn't it at Utah?
No, it's at Oregon.
It's at Oregon. If it's at Oregon, I'm going with Oregon. As far as a score, I think it's going to end up being. I know God, it's so hard to figure this out. I'm going to say it's going to end up being 28 to 21, Oregon.
Interesting. All right, I'm going to go differently. I'm going to say that Utah pulls out the upset and manages to win in Oregon. And I think it'll be a more traditional Pac-12 game where there's a lot of scoring, where Oregon will score a lot of points, but so will Utah. So I will say that Utah ends up winning, let's say, 38 to 35 over Oregon.
Okay.
And then with USC versus UCLA, it is at UCLA at the Rose Bowl, but obviously it's in the same city, so not a huge amount of travel for the USC fans. And I'm going to go more traditional here. I think USC is going to pull it out, and they will be one of the top contenders for the Pac-12 championship this year. So I'll say that USC wins, let's say 31 to 21 over UCLA.
31 to 21. Okay. I'm going to agree with you that USC is going to be the victor here. And I will just say I'm going to go 35-24.
Okay. 35.
Now, are you going to that game by chance? Since that's at the Rose Bowl. You
Right.
could probably get a ticket for, $15 or something because nobody attends UCLA football games.
Well, no, actually, I think it's already sold out.
Oh,
I
really?
I saw something about
That,
that, a
that will
headline.
be by far the biggest crowd they've had all year. I mean, have you seen some of the crowds that UCLA has played in?
And
I mean,
not
it's
this
been an
year, no.
embarrassment. Oh, it's been embarrassing. Embarrassing how empty that stadium has been.
Especially considering that they're having a good year.
Good. Yes, they're good.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is true. They both have good records. So now the only when you're good fans will start showing up for UCLA again. So
Yeah. Um, Unfortunately, I have other obligations. I already made plans for Saturday, so I won't be able to go.
mhm,
Um,
mhm.
but I did consider it when I saw, oh yeah, that game's coming up, and it's in the Rose Bowl. I've been there once
Right.
before for a game, and it was pretty fun.
Yes, it is. It's a great
Um,
stadium to watch a football game.
and real quick, while we've been doing this podcast live here on Tuesday, the CFP rankings have come out. Nothing too surprising, right? Because like the top 5 teams all won. So it's still Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, TCU, Tennessee. And now LSU, USC, and Alabama have all moved up to 7, 8, 9. And Oregon, who was number 6, has fallen down to 12th because of their loss. So I'd say that's the biggest kind of noteworthy
Yeah.
thing here.
And wasn't Alabama ninth last week?
Uh, yes, Alabama was ninth. They moved up to 8th, so they went up
They
one
moved up to
spot.
eighth. So they moved up because basically Oregon fell out.
Right. Even though
Right.
they almost lost to Ole Miss. So
I know. Well, that's what I was going to say. That's why I was curious because I do not want them to be able to sneak up and get in there. Because keep in mind now, Alabama will not be playing in the conference championship game, and depending on how all those things play out, could they sneak their way up into number 4 position like they have done in the past? And my only hope is that no, they can't do that. Even if they beat Auburn and whoever they're playing this weekend, I don't give a damn. They cannot be in that playoff. Unacceptable. And where is Clemson in this?
they're ninth. They're right below Alabama.
They're not. Okay, so they're kind of out of it on the outside looking in at this point too. So wow. So TCU looks like they're going to have a very good chance because I think if they can simply avoid a loss and get to that Big 12 championship game, they should be able to win that, and they probably stay in that top 4 because Michigan and Ohio State are obviously going to play each other. So one of them is going to get pushed back down, and that's going to allow Tennessee to sneak in, right? Even though they're not even in the conference championship game, Tennessee is going to end up being 4th.
Right. Well, that's what I was going to say is that in terms of your fear of Alabama sneaking in, is that there's another SEC team with only one loss above them that beat Alabama that is the more likely potential
Yeah.
sneak in team. So I think
Yeah.
there's almost no chance Alabama makes it in. It's like a 1%
Right. Yep.
thing.
You're exactly right. But we're still going to end up with 2 SEC teams.
Maybe.
No, I think it's most likely.
Well,
Unless Michigan and Ohio State end up in this, battle royale, and Michigan beats Ohio State by 3 points or 2 points or something, and then they drop Ohio State from 2nd to 4th, and they keep them ahead of Tennessee.
right. Well,
Because TCU is going to be in if things go according to Hoyle, and Georgia's going to be in if things go according to Hoyle. So there's two of them, and the Pac-12 will again be on the outside looking in, which is ironic that a USC might be held out.
Well, I would agree with you that in terms of possible sneak-ins, you have the loser of Ohio State, Michigan, if that's like a really close game. The loser of that could potentially sneak in. But also, I think if USC wins out, basically, they only have the one loss on their record,
Yep.
then I think they'd have a stronger argument than Tennessee does as a conference champion.
Well, I would hope that's true. That has not historically been the case. That's the way it was supposed to go. We can go into that argument again if we want, or not argument, but discussion. But that'll be for another podcast. But history in the era of the college football playoff would predict that the SEC team is going to get the benefit of the doubt because of the, I think, overt influence from the television partner ESPN, and as well as the fact that there's enough television eyeballs in the SEC that are versus the Pac-12. I mean, but the USC is the one team that brings eyeballs that can compete with an SEC school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, USC does have that power to them. So we'll
Right.
have to see how it goes. Obviously, in these last couple of podcasts, we'll be talking more about the playoff and the conference championship games as we narrow down the teams that are really in contention and get to the big rivalry games to end off the season. So there's a lot to look forward to, even when Nebraska isn't good.
That is true. There's going to be some good football this weekend for sure. And I just hope that Nebraska, I hope their defense continues to strive and not give up. And if they do that and play hard like they've been playing, I think they'll be able to have some success against Wisconsin. And then it's just a matter of if all of a sudden, if Casey Thompson is truly able to go and can play well, then I think we have a legitimate chance.
Yeah.
I think that the circumstance, I just don't know that he would make it the whole game. I can't visualize that.
Right. I agree with you. I think we have a chance for sure. But we'll see how it goes. If you all out there enjoyed listening to this podcast, you can reach out to us at huskerpete13@gmail.com. You can find us online if you search for College Football Throwdown on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. You can leave us some ratings and reviews. Leave a comment on one of the episodes. We'll always read that stuff out on the air. So thank you all for listening, and thank you, Dad, for joining me for this episode. And until next time, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.